Welcome to Old Man Blerd. Hi, I'm John, and along with my friend Terrence, we make up a pair of lifelong geeks who happen to be black, over 50, but are certainly nerds first and foremost. The Alpha Geek and the Omega Freak. And we welcome everyone. And by everyone, we mean nerds, blerds, and bleaks, cosplayers and role players, geeks and freaks, Marvel zombies and distinguished competitors, Trekkies, Star Warriors, Batmaniacs, and Spider fans, Warhams, Whovians, AFOLs, adult fans of Legos, Tolkienites, Weeaboos, Supernatural Hunters, and Otakus, Ava Geeks, Bro Stars, and Sis Stars, Pokemon Trainers, Potterheads, Bronies, Whovians, Browncoats, and Scoobies, and all nerd properties in between. Because we are over 50, we've seen a thing or two, and have experience, long experience, with a lot of these properties. So thank you for listening to Old Man Blerd.
Yep. All right, can you hear me? Oh, I think you're muted. I think you're still muted there.
Hello?
Darren. Hello. There you are. You can actually get rid of the video if you want, considering I don't typically upload video, just upload the soundtrack. And that might help your bandwidth. Oh, now you look like your bandwidth is good.
See, I told you.
Nice. It's hot or cold. So again, welcome to Old Man Blerd. We were having
This might take us 4 hours to get 2 minutes.
Yes, just to get through the introduction. We are 50-something nerds who have seen a thing or two about all things nerdy, and we get to reminisce and commiserate and complain and vent and laugh about all of those things. So what I think that when I lost you, I asked, what nerdy thing were you up to in the last 7 days?
Nothing much. You know,
Nothing.
I was geeking out over a few nerd properties on the Super Bowl commercials.
Ah, yes. See, I, in true nerd fashion, wasn't watching the Super Bowl. I don't really have any animosity towards football particularly, but you know, the sports I watch, this is a bit of shade I'm throwing. Play more games. Soccer plays more games. Hockey plays more games. Hockey plays more games. Let's see. Basketball plays more games. Football plays a measly 17 games. It's like I think baseball plays like 182.
Yes, they do.
And Premier League soccer is like 30 something, 38 maybe. I'm pretty sure hockey's around 80 something. I don't start
let's go to sports geekdom for a moment.
Yes.
Since we're still talking about geek or
it's still geekdom, it's still nerddom.
Nerddom.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Sports wise, the shortest lifespan team wise is football, American football.
Yeah, they're gonna get CTE any moment now. So they're, not to joke about such a dark subject, but sometimes the only laugh we can have is gallows humor. But yeah, they don't really last long in that sport. But
I think in mixed martial arts, I think it's the shortest one now.
Yes, I imagine you're only doing that for a few years, 5 maybe years or so.
Right, and then after that is boxing.
Yeah. Yes. The dangerous sports. You know, it's strangely, I think that hockey they can go pretty good. Jordy,
hockey is like soccer, or in both cases, like basketball. All three of them have the commonality that they pass as they get older.
Yeah, I mean, I almost called him Jordy, but it's Gordie Howe. Gosh, all the hockey nerds out there would hit me with their sticks. They'd check me into a steel wall for.
Well, they get armor and a weapon. Think about that.
Yeah, so Gordie Howe, I remembered. You know, he played for quite some time. Bobby Orr played for quite some time. I think Gretzky played for quite a bit too. So they're even though they're taking the hits, they seem to last a little bit longer than football players and play more games. So there's the shade. It's like
Well, like I said, it's the passing. It is in baseball. They start aiming their shots. That's what it
yes,
is. They start aiming, even if it's a blunt. They aim it.
yeah. I imagine you get a couple of bean balls, you probably aren't gonna you aren't gonna play for real long. That's
No,
true.
no, no.
But so your geekdom was mostly locked up in Super Bowl commercials, which I imagine I'm going to see at some point. I used to think, oh, I'm going to watch the Super Bowl because I'll see some commercials. It's capitalism. I'm going to see those commercials eventually. I'll probably see them before, during, and after a Super Bowl. So I don't think I need to watch football to check them out. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
casting
but see, then
all
the
the
edited
shade.
and cut out. They're edited and they cut them down.
Sure,
That's a funny thing now. We edit commercials because sometimes a commercial will be a whole minute. They edit down and you go, well, that don't make sense.
sure,
That don't make
sure.
sense. And they edit it down. They especially able to do that on geek movies.
Hmm. Yeah, because they already know it's like, look, it's Captain Marvel, go. Look, it's Madam Web, go, which we will talk about in a little bit. I suppose the geek thing that I've been doing is playing the One Piece card game, which if you see cards, ladies and gentlemen, out and about, pick them up because they're going to be gone soon. There's a mad, crazy rush to get One Piece cards. And as a One Piece fan who's watched all the anime and reads the manga as well, they're pretty collectible and the game is quite fun. So I finally have went through all the tutorials and played the online version of the game that I forgot the gentleman that put up sort of made his own version of the game. He takes Patreon subscriptions. Please help him out. I'll probably remember the name sometime during this podcast, but it's a great game. It's a fun game to play. It's a bit like Pokemon in a way, a bit like Magic in a way, a little easier, I think, to get the rules and pretty fast, but it's pretty fun. And
Hmm.
that's the geeky thing, and catching up with all of the anime that I've been trying to, you know, catch up on. Free Ren is a really good one that I've been watching. I finally went back to Samurai Champloo. That's the uh, same animators as for Cowboy Bebop with Samurai
Mm-hmm.
Champloo. It's very good. And I think that's about it. I'm sure that, something will occur to me when we start doing our extended Nope versus Dope segment.
No, I got one for you right now since you mentioned it to a degree.
Okay, is it a
Cowboy Bebop
nope or a dope?
is both. Cowboy
So,
Bebop, when they changed the clothing of Valentine in the live action versus the cartoon,
mm-hmm,
that was both a dope and a nope at the same time. Because some people go, well, they're making it into an object. Some people are so concerned about the objectivity of any character,
mm-hmm.
more so women in Western culture, but still any character as far as sexual gratification, rather than knowing why the character dresses that way anyway. There's a story, very few characters just dress that way
That's
in
true.
any storyline. It could be the weather, it could be their culture. I mean, you look at the Indian Hindi Saran, I think that's how you pronounce it.
The sarong, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. In some cultures that's considered very risque,
sure,
but is traditional.
sure. Well, I think that the funny thing about her dress in the anime is that it sort of makes sense to her character. And I think when you take that out of two-dimensional anime space and throw it into three-dimensional human space, it is a fairly revealing costume that probably not a lot of actresses would want to wear. But, I look to Fifth Element, and Fifth Element had some crazy costumes, and it fit because you're thinking this is in the future, and people are going to be a lot different in the future. It's like when you watch that Cyberpunk anime that was also good on Netflix. Yeah, people dress differently in the future. People aren't going to go back to necessarily Victorian dress where it's like, ooh, look at her ankles. It's like,
Actually, I beg to differ again. I think
but
some will, because you always have that
that's true.
historian dresser.
That's true. You're always going to have some steampunk weirdo. I like steampunk. My tongue is firmly in cheek when I say steampunk weirdo. But yeah, you're gonna find some steampunk weirdo that's like, oh, I'm gonna dress like the Victorian age with, all kinds of electronic devices on my top hat.
Well, I
But
mean, a
yes,
good example, they have a game coming out called Ronin. And the
okay,
interesting thing is for the PS5. And the interesting thing is they take advantage of 1850.
okay,
1850 is a magical time because you have cowboys,
sure,
you have samurai,
sure,
you have pirates,
yeah.
you
You
have
have,
Zulu.
yeah, you have all of the various nerd properties that are around, right?
Right. So, I mean, you think, wow, that's pretty cool.
I don't have a nope or a dope. And ladies and gentlemen, we should probably explain because we haven't done them consistently. But nope and dope are nope, something that's in sort of pop culture, nerd world, geek world, what have you, that we are just cannot abide, and dope being something that we really, really like.
Or
Uh,
support.
or support. And I think that so that the nope and dope on Hope Valentine's uh costume from the live action to the anime was that explains that piece. Okay, back to what you were saying. Go ahead.
It's just that that's a fascinating time that I think more should go into exploring. Because culturally, it
Yes,
is truly a fascinating time. Even
yeah,
though the pirates would be older our age.
that is true. uh
Yes.
I think that reminds me of, I don't have a nope or a dope for this, but there is a pirate game that just came out.
Skull and Bones.
Yes, and I think that IGN gave it a lukewarm positive review. Like, I think they
Well,
might have given it like a 7 or something like that.
as a gamer of old, I give it the review because I don't own it. But one of two things: either you play it so many you have 5 copies, or you don't play it but you get it because you are supporting the system and you have a coaster.
Hmm. Is it on computer or is it on a PS5 and all of that?
It's on the PS5 and
Okay.
on the Xbox, so you can
Hmm.
probably get it on computer too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, maybe. Sometimes they have them. They make you wait on some of that stuff. I guess I don't have a nope or a dope for it. I have a hope. I suppose
Okay, we'll add that as a
we'll
third
add that
category.
as a third category. I have a hope that it will be good. I was never a big pirate person, which is kind of odd considering how much I love One Piece. But
Yeah, who are
I
you?
I know, right? I kind of liked Hook, and Peter Pan, I should say. I didn't. I think I saw most of Hook, and it was fine.
My
I-
goodness.
but I think that what has now that I hear more about what the history of pirates was, I'm more intrigued. I'd like to maybe pick up a decent book about it. Oh,
Pirates
settle
were
down.
interesting because as long as you did the job, they did not care about your race, your heritage, or your religion.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, is that I think that that's what makes it intriguing to me, is that they seem to be fairly egalitarian, really,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of who was able to be on the ship. So they didn't much care about race. I don't know how much they cared or didn't care about gender. Now, I'm not going to make any apologies for what I'm sure was a tremendous amount of looting, a tremendous amount of murder, and
Well,
possible
I mean,
rape
it's one of
and
the things,
things.
but you have
But
to understand, I mean, historical wise, as far as pirates go, it's far easier to have them be a lifestyle and have heroes and villains among them. You're not going to be
sure,
able to do that with the Nazis. There
no,
you go. I'm
yes,
just saying, you might have The guy who played Goldfinger on record, he was as close to a good Nazi as you got because he was conscripted.
Sure,
He
sure,
did not support them, but he did not want to get killed nor his family get killed.
sure. And so yeah, so I'm intrigued. Skull and Bones. I think I'll probably check it out as a hope. I do have another not nope, not dope, but a hope, and that's the Fantastic Four. I believe the final casting for the Fantastic Four has come out now.
Yes.
Right? I believe I'm going to look it up real quick because some of the names escape me. But let's see. Fantastic Four cast. I'm pulling it up for you, ladies and gentlemen. So the new cast. Oh, they're still not showing. Oh yeah, here it is. This is on, I guess, the Man of Many UK. I don't know what that site is, but anyway, Pedro Pascal. Yeah, Pedro Pascal is going to be Reed Richards. Vanessa Kirby is going to be Sue Storm, and Joseph Quinn is going to be Johnny Storm, and Ebon Moss Backrack is Ben Grimm. I'm unfamiliar with him. I think folks will remember Joseph Quinn. He played Eddie in Stranger Things, the D&D metal kid, which I thought was about as accurate as a thing could possibly be from the 1980s and Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, all of my friends that
Flashbacks.
What?
Flashbacks.
Yes, every single person that I knew that played D&D with me had a denim jacket that had Dio on the back, and and we're into heavy metal. It's like all of the friends of mine that were sort of nerdy geeks in middle school turned into heavy metal guys in high school. It was very interesting. Some of them turned into new wavers like me, new waver, goth, punk people. But for the most part, they were all of my.
We did not fit. That's where we
Yes,
belong.
they did. And so Eddie was about the most realistic character in all of Stranger Things, except for the first season. The first season, all of them were pretty realistic.
We were all the kid. We were all the kid that we didn't fit. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't the one that belonged to any group. I just kind of bounced around.
Yeah, I think I bounced around until I solidly became kind of a new wave, new romantic, gothy punk kid by about 10th, 11th grade. And I was into theater, so I was doing theater stuff, and so I was doing speech competitions, humorous and terp and stuff, and debate, and so I was going to be on the outs until just about the last year of school. And then it was like,
Wow.
oh, those kids are kind of cool. Yeah. So, but Eddie was very realistic, and that is the actor that's going to be playing Johnny. Pedro Pascal, everyone knows from Last of Us and The Mandalorian. He's great. So
He's just going to be. He's the wild kid right now. He's everywhere.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is sort of. There are certain people where you can tell that they must. I don't know. I think they call it the Q meter, or the hotness factor, or the X factor, whatever it is, where they're just their stock is rising, and his has been rising probably since The Mandalorian for sure. And
but his agent's not out of work yet.
No, he must have a hell of a publicist. So getting him to be Reed Richards, I was intrigued when, as for a while there, they were looking at Adam Driver, and
he could do it too.
I would have preferred Adam Driver, actually. I do like Pedro Pascal, but Pedro Pascal looks a little bit rougher to me than I imagine Reed Richards being. I imagine Reed Richards being kind of on the nerdy side of things. The first Reed Richards that for that original set of movies that had Jessica Alba, I think that Reed Richards, Ian Grufford of Grufford is something like that.
Yeah, he was genetic casting, brother.
Yeah, that was the most Reed Richards looking person I have ever seen, I think.
I mean, it was just genetics. He had no choice.
Yes. Now, I don't know anything about Vanessa Kirby, but I guess she was in Napoleon.
No,
And
no, nothing.
yeah, I don't really know anything about her particularly. I thought it was interesting casting having Jessica Alba in it, and you know, but I do think that, and gosh, I'm sure all of the all of the people that are woke, anti-woke casting would applaud me for saying it, but I didn't see her as particularly as Sue Richards.
Also, they
And
made her stop acting.
which, that's unfortunate because I thought she was good in some stuff that I've seen her
You know what I'm saying? That part made her stop acting. I don't know why.
in. Hmm.
You know,
Yeah, I
because I
would
mean
have
they
to look
talked
that
about.
up. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have information on why Jessica Alba bailed on acting related to Fantastic Four, I can't imagine the fandom being super cool, which is why I think it took so long for them to get the cast for Fantastic Four. I mean, it took them a while. I don't. They went through multiple groups of people to
Well, this would
try
be
to.
Group 4.
Yeah, right. And free of charge, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you what my pitch would have been to the Fantastic Four. They went to the negative zone before Iron Man became Iron Man. Before anything, they went to the negative zone there through cosmic rays and being lost in a completely different plane of existence. They come back with superpowers. So that means they avoid the snap with Thanos, and they still end up being sort of the first superheroes, the first family. In other words, everyone looked up to them and then they just vanished. That would be the perfect thing. And then they happen to bring stuff back from the negative zone, like Annihilus or Blastar or even Galactus. And then you have your story. And maybe Doctor Doom, as a major rival, was obsessed with them being gone, and then slowly took over his country, and he ends up being a big bad. And there it is, free of charge. Marvel, you would have made a mint if you had just listened to me. Now, what they will do is probably make these people like, oh, well, we're inspired by Iron Man. And it's like, no. My Fantastic Four was the first superhero group of the Marvel Universe. And I will be a real jerk when it comes to being a geek, a blerd about that. I think they were first, and it was important that they were first. So
There are reasons why it was important.
yeah, there was reasons why they were important. There was reasons why, Reed Richards was the smartest in order of smartness in the Marvel universe. It was like Reed
It's
Richards, and then way after that, it was Tony Stark and Hank Pym and folks like that.
actually, the way they explain it, what you say is true. I'm not going to take away from what you said, but the way I understand it is that Reed Richards is kind of like, if you want to give numbers, okay, give numbers. He's more like
Mm-hmm.
8 in everything. But then when you want to get to biology, okay, here comes Reed. I mean,
Hank Pym, yeah,
Banner,
or
Banner.
Banner,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
sure,
You want to?
sure,
He's more like a 10. You see what I'm
sure.
saying? And
Yeah,
then
everybody had their specialty, but Reed was overall the smartest because he was smart in all of them.
right, he could talk to them all.
He
Like we
was,
can about comics or certain things. We can sit there and talk all day about different characters, which
yeah.
makes us have a 10.
And see, everything I've seen Adam Driver in, I would have enjoyed him in. I think I've seen him in House of Gucci. I thought he was good in that. I actually enjoyed him in the Star Wars sequels. I thought he was fine. I think it was miswritten, a lot of that stuff,
Yes,
but
absolutely correct, 100%.
I thought everything I've seen him in has been great. And I think he I think could convey the smoldery brainiac, insular side of Reed Richards, who's so focused on solving a problem that he ignores all other things, the sort of almost um, just at the expense of all other things kind of Reed Richards,
Oh no, exactly what you say is
neurotypical
true.
kind of Reed Richards is what I would think of. And I don't know, maybe Pedro Pascal can play that. I mean, he's played just about everything else, so why not?
I'm not taking that from him, but realistically, from what you've seen, Adam Driver could probably do it, convey it better as far as I said in previous communications about how, Alan Scott, the original, his being married was the affair as far
Mm-hmm.
as him and his wife went.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being a superhero was the affair, and that's what got in the way. I figure Reed Richards would be almost the same thing. His science, his quest for knowledge is the affair
Sure.
when it comes to Sue. And she
Sure.
both loves that because he saves lives, but she hates that because what the hell?
Well, and I think the best one, I mean, outside of the Kirby stuff and outside of the Byrne stuff, and I mean, I am a moderate Fantastic Four fan, like in that I
You
probably
didn't like Austin?
oh Terry Austin. I don't remember Terry Austin doing anything. Well, maybe inking for stuff that was in Fantastic Four.
Him and Byrne, they kind of switched off back and forth.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know. I didn't know if he had done any of the illustration. I know he did the inking for just about everything Byrne did in the 80s. But I love the Byrne run. I think the Byrne run arguably is better than the Kirby Stan Lee run, but the Stan Lee and Kirby run's it's serious Silver Age good stuff. I have a fairly deep love for Fantastic Four, but I think that they have just been mismanaged partially because of licensing. I think
Right.
Spider-Man and X-Men and Fantastic Four have been,
And Hulk.
and Hulk to some degree too, have all been poorly managed because of licensing. It's like, who owns them? Sony owns them, Marvel owns them, who owns them? And the Fantastic Four, I understand that they had to use Robert Downey Jr. to be the tentpole to start the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in the comics, it was the Fantastic Four. It was like they were called America, Marvel's first family, and there was a reason because they just were so everything about them, even though they were arguably, I think, a ripoff of the Challengers of the Unknown.
Absolutely correct.
I think Challengers of the Unknown might have come out earlier, didn't it?
Yeah, that was Kirby's first play into such things,
Yeah.
and he did that for DC, and that is to me one of the most realistic superheroes. Even now, if you have $1 billion, you can go do it.
The problem with the Challengers of the Unknown is that it's just like so many things where someone can come out with a good idea and someone can do it better. It's kind of like Nine Inch Nails. This is music nerddom for a brief moment. There were, KMFDM, there was Front 242, there was Ministry, there was all these industrial acts, Robin Gristle, Einster Zen Neubaut, and all these sort of, see, I'm way deep into the nerd geeks, music geek stuff. But anyway, all those industrial acts were doing stuff for years, but it wasn't until Nine Inch Nails came out and really made that sound popular as well as better, arguably, that people got into heavy synth music. And I think that I've read some Challenges of the Unknown, but it's a different animal compared to the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four, the relationships that they have, Sue and Reed being married, and Johnny and Sue being siblings, and Reed and Ben being close college friends. There was different dynamics, and Ben and Johnny having their almost sibling-ish rivalry about things. I There was just an energy there, an electricity that Challengers of the Unknown I don't think had. I think they had the interesting concepts, the weird concepts, but the Fantastic Four, there was something a little special there, and maybe that's my bias. I mean, but I
Oh no,
I
I'm not
I
taking it
give
that way
credit
at
where
all.
credit is due. I absolutely think that the Challengers of the Unknown was the Fantastic Four before the Fantastic Four. And readers, ladies and gentlemen out there, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it was first, but I believe that Doom Patrol might have been before X-Men or around this, maybe even
Yes,
the same month.
yes, they were before.
And so the Chief is absolutely Professor Xavier, and all of the Doom Patrol, which was always weird. I felt like there are certain titles in DC that I feel are more Marvel than DC, and I think there's certain titles in Marvel that are more DC than Marvel. And I always felt like Doom Patrol was very Marvel because they were misanthropes and misfits and everything else, and that isn't the recipe for most of DC.
No, when one of your hero characters is a book character living, that takes it to a whole nother level.
Sure, a brain in a machine.
Right. I mean,
You
that takes it to a whole nother level.
know?
You
A
know,
person whose powers can only be used when the body is collapsed.
yeah,
I
you know.
mean, a chief that's in a wheelchair, that's yeah. So it definitely felt more Marvel to me than DC. But so I have a hope for the Fantastic Four. I do hope it does well. But I think that I don't know. I am somewhat skeptical. Uh, and that gets, I think, to a little bit of a nope with you when it comes to the Superman television show, correct?
Well, yes, they decided they were going to cancel the show Superman and Lois,
Har-
because uh Disney, I mean not Disney, God forgive me, Warner Discovery,
Yeah, blasphemer.
War- Warner Discovery decided in their infinite wisdom that there cannot be two Superman.
Hmm.
Which to me has always been an argument, because there's three things that they're not thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
One is, most fans, if they just love the character, they don't care where it comes from. That's just it. Like you were saying about the Fantastic Four. You
Mm-hmm.
love the Herbie cartoon from years ago.
Sure.
See, that's what I mean. I didn't hate it, but I would say I couldn't understand why they had him there instead of, I think it was, they
It
had him
was.
there rather than the Human Torch.
I think it was more licensing shenanigans because
I
I
think it was
think
more they want some kid lighting himself on fire.
there was I think there might have been some of that, but I think that there was a period of time where the Golden Age Human Torch in early Marvel and the Human Torch, there was some issues in terms of
Mm.
ownership. But it might have just been they were like, oh, we don't want kids setting themselves on fire to be the Human Torch, which
I think that's more it than anything.
which is possible because I think they really thought everyone was stupid.
Well, it didn't help
But
in the 50s. People were jumping out of the windows because of
of
Superman.
Superman, that's
And
true. So
George
okay,
Reeves.
so maybe there was a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. Uh, yeah, yeah. So that probably checks out. But so they're going to cancel it, you think?
They're canceling it because they don't want the two Superman running around at the same time. And this is ridiculous, because Toho felt the same way,
Mm-hmm.
rightfully so, because the first Godzilla iteration we did, as they call it, Zilla,
Mm-hmm.
from '98, which I didn't think was bad, but whatever, here or there. And once the American Legendary Edition came out,
Mm-hmm.
and they saw how much money they made, they got actually jealous. So that's when
Mm-hmm.
they did Shin Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
And then they saw that they were making money between Legendary, because then there was Kong, and they connected Kong to Godzilla at the same time. So they like, wait a minute, we're making money. And then Netflix did a cartoon called Planet Godzilla at the same time. And like, oh my God, we're making money.
So yeah, they
And this
own
is
the
like,
intellectual property, so I don't think they have to worry about it too much.
well, that's what I'm saying. We're making money. And so my argument is the same as Superman. They can make money from both the TV show, because it was the highest CW show in ratings.
Mm-hmm.
It had the highest consistent audience.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was it expensive? Well, then you just learn how to cut costs like they used to do. What I mean is they would use the same set.
Mm.
They would just change the design of it. I mean, an office could be a garage.
Sure.
Just change the setting or move the furniture.
Well, they could have
They
done that with Flash too, and I thought they really messed over the actor that played the television Flash, which I thought was a great show. I thought
It was.
that was much more like what I feel when I think about the Flash. That was had all of the feeling of when I read Flash comics, what it was like.
Oh, I totally agree. That he
Um,
was laid back, because nothing could hurt him, in the sense that he can outmove it.
sure. And Flash is I thought that Flash was great, but they gave it to Ezra Miller, and that guy went on I don't know what, I guess I should say allegedly went on a tri-state crime spree, and they were like, "Nah, we're gonna still have him." I mean, it's like at a certain point, it's like, you could have this guy could have stepped in the role and everybody would have been happy. I mean, Flash fans would have been happy, everybody would have been happy, but that guy isn't as quote unquote sexy as probably people, producers, I guess, think Ezra Miller
Well,
is.
well, I won't say sexy. I would say I'm just going to sound really bad because I'm at a stage now. We don't say get off the lawn. We say get off my console
Sure, sure,
because we're geeks. Get off my console.
sure. But I mean, he would have been perfect. Because I think that when you think about superheroes, maybe not Wally West so much, but certainly Barry Allen, you think of him as being slightly geeky. I mean, he was very geeky in those early Silver Age issues.
Oh no, he was because I remember my shock. I'll be
Hmm.
honest, when I first found the Flash in the comic store, I was like, okay, whatever. And then whatever reason as the Satan goes, the universe maybe look at one issue. He was collecting comics. I'm like, oh my God, he's collecting comics. A superhero that collects comics,
Yeah,
you know?
the Flash of Two Worlds. I think he's reading an old Flash comic book in that, if I recall
Yeah,
correctly.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's just so cool. I mean, you're just like, oh my God,
Yeah,
geeking out again. Oh
Barry
my God.
Allen was Barry Allen was pretty geeky. Wally West a little less geeky, but Barry Allen for sure. And so, but I think that somebody said, "Oh, Ezra, Miller tests well, and he's an attractive kid, I guess." And today's version of how beauty standards change, and it was like, nah, we're gonna have him instead of the fellow that was in the Flash television show. Gosh, this is where I really show that I'm an old man Blerd. I don't remember his name either. The actor that played
I think his
Flash.
name was Gus.
Hmm.
I think his name was Gus because it is not something that's common. It does start with a G.
Really, yeah. He's on all that one meme that's in front of the the gravestone. That's pretty funny. That you
Yeah.
just see him all the time. Grant Gustin.
Oh, Grant, not Gus. Okay. Well,
Yeah, Grant
Gustin,
Gustin.
last name Gustin. Gus.
Yeah, he
Gustin.
was great. I mean, I need to, it's one of the other things I need to catch up on because I think I watched the first two or maybe three seasons of it, but I got behind and just got involved in other stuff. And I mean, I watched, I think, Arrow for the first 3 or 4 seasons as well. But yeah, I think that's a solid nope saying that, to have, to get rid of that Superman show just for James Gunn. And is he just having a, what they hired him to have a huge vision to create the DC cinematic universe? Is that what
Basically,
they've
they wanted
done?
their version of
And
Kevin from Marvel. That's
it,
what they wanted.
and they just wanted him to have all of the films tied together and all of the I think that he is doing the animated Creature Commandos, which is another thing that I would think would be awesome because that
And see, that one
again,
makes me mad there because I'm sorry. That's where I'm old and I was there when Creature Commandos was part of Weird War Hero stories.
sure, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I may have a few weird war stories floating around in one of my long boxes. But
and I
yeah.
remember Vinny the vampire and the Frank. Yeah, see a lot of people. What? Yeah. I remember loving that. And you just changed the story. Where's Vinny?
Oh, so they got rid of certain characters, huh?
Yeah. Oh, I just no.
Well, and see, that's just, I don't know why. What is the point of getting rid of I mean, they're just, I mean, no one's going to know the Creature Commandos except weirdos like us. So I never understood why you need to change the lore when if you kept the lore the same, an audience that's unfamiliar with the intellectual property isn't going to know. They're not going to go,
Well,
"Oh, this is silly." I mean, I understand making changes like, "Oh, Spider-Man didn't get bit by a radioactive spider because we now know radioactivity kills you." Make it a DNA enhanced spider. Okay, fine. Fine. I can accept those kinds of changes, but there's no reason to just have different creature commandos than the original creature commandos. I mean,
especially when they were based upon a combination of science and magic throughout the whole thing.
sure.
I mean,
Sure.
I mean,
They
Frankie was he wasn't undead. He was just basically what the little fingertip from death,
Mhm.
and they rebuild him, and that's
Mhm.
why he's like got metal enhancements and everything, but he looks all but dead because It was 1940s tech.
Sure. So, and didn't Grant Morrison bring back Frankenstein? He brought it back
as
somewhere
part of the
the
Frankenstein soldier.
yeah, like
GI Frankenstein, I think it was,
yes. Like when
for the
he was
52.
they had him do Bulleteer or whatever. Was it
Mhm.
Bulleteer? There was a
I think
few
so.
different Clarion. He did a bunch. He did like 4 or 5 issue titles that was part of that new 52, and he explored all the weirder sides to DC, which to me, that's an in for me, because I think weird DC was always, I just always dug weird DC, which is why I
Well,
can
see, that's what
handle.
they were actually saying was Marvel versus DC. The one thing they said is Marvel's Elseworlds or multiverse is nothing compared to DC, because DC, they absorb their enemy.
Sure.
They absorb, the S verse or Shazam world. They
Sure.
absorb all of
Yeah, it's
those
like,
characters.
let's sue you because for those of you that don't know, ladies and gentlemen out there, DC sued and won, saying that Captain Marvel was too similar to their Superman. And
Oh, the worst one
basically,
was
yeah,
Terrific Man.
yeah, and they basically sued them so that they had to stop making Captain Marvel. So Captain Marvel, and then they eventually bought Captain Marvel. Now, the
Yes.
only similarity, which tells you when they sued, was 1950s or 40s or somewhere in there. Their only similarities is they both had black hair and wore capes. One was completely magic, and the other was an alien. There
Right.
weren't their colors weren't even the same. It was, yeah, Superman was red and blue, but
But
Captain Marvel was like red and gold and white. I mean, there was
yeah,
very little similarity. Uh,
and he was outselling. That was the biggest thing. He was
well, and
outselling Superman.
that's why they went after him, is because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone out there in cyberspace, but I believe Captain Marvel, until they got sued, was beating Superman's sales numbers like 2-1 or something crazy.
I was
Uh,
going to say 3-1.
yeah, it was something. It was like I mean, this is pre-video games, pre-television, pre all of the things where that could distract young people from something other than comic books. That's when comic books were, outside of riding your
14.
bike, and maybe playing cops and robbers or cowboys and Indians back in the
Oh
40s
God,
or
you're talking
50s.
about using swords that are made of sticks.
Yes, exactly. Out to maybe tossing, rolling a hoop with a stick. There wasn't a whole lot of entertainment for kids in the 40s and 50s. So, they read comic books. So comic books were doing numbers like in the millions back then. I mean, they're just nowhere near that anymore.
For our
So,
listeners, that is before us.
yes, that is before us. That is we were born solidly in the Silver Age. And red in the bronze and golden bronze age. Backtracked a little bit to the Silver Age and Golden Age, of course, but yeah, it was before our time. Before
Just before they started
BC,
saying how bleaky we are.
yeah, BBG, before Black Geek. So yeah, so they sued him, and that they won and basically killed that property. And arguably, I don't think the property has ever come back. I think that this newest set of movies, I think, did okay, and I think it was before I think the main subject of today's conversation, superhero fatigue. I think it was before that. But in general, it never came back after getting decimated by DC. When I think they were still known as National. Were they National Comics then?
They were national until the 60s.
Yes. So,
We're talking about like when I was born, about 67, 68.
and I've correct me if I'm wrong, because I know Marvel really well, DC really well, and we know each other's fandoms okay. I believe DC stood for Detective Comics, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so it was the initials of Detective Comics because that was their one real cash cow for a while.
Yes.
Changed to DC after being National, and for Marvel it was Timely, and then became Marvel.
Yes.
So, yes. So, yeah, that's a
And
pretty
that
strong.
weird period where Marvel split off and had Atlas.
Yes. And so that is a pretty strong nope, that killing an intellectual property because James Gunn wants to expand the universe. And I think this is where we get to the main topic for this episode, which is superhero fatigue a thing, and is it happening? And I think I'm going to argue that it is sort of happening. And maybe it's just happening for me because I haven't seen any movie at the theaters that was a superhero movie since, I think, the second Doctor Strange. Was that post Endgame?
Yes,
That was
yes, it
post
was.
Endgame. Oh, okay.
Yes,
So I did see a movie post Endgame, which was the Doctor Strange movie, because I like Doctor Strange. I like psychedelic concepts and psychedelic albums and psychedelic comics. So I was
and
gonna,
Sam Raimi.
yeah, and I like Sam Raimi. I loved him since Evil Dead. So, and Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness and Darkman and all the things. So yeah, I for me, maybe there is a bit of superhero fatigue. And so this whole marshaling the resources for James Gunn to take over and create the DC, oops, Freudian slip, the DC
See?
cinematic universe. I think he might be barking up the wrong tree. You're always going to have a Batman movie that does moderately well. They change Batman's, like, I don't know, the average family changes toilet paper. So there's always a new Batman actor. And that always tends to do fairly well. But I just don't see the, I guess that's DC. That's that's James Gunn calling me saying, "Hey, I heard my name ringing." I just don't see it being as successful as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I think there's fatigue. I think there has been
Well,
a bit of a revolution against superhero films. Like, they just were too ubiquitous for a while. It was like that was all that was playing at the theaters, and people went. And then you started getting critics like, Martin Scorsese and other actors saying, you have to be in a Marvel movie, and just being oppressed by superhero films. So I think that them trying to get James Gunn to take this over, I think they're going to run smack dab into superhero fatigue, because I do think there's more than perhaps sexism at play with the poor numbers that are being shown with some of the most recent superhero films. Now, what say you, Terrence, my brother from another mother?
well, a couple things. Number one, as I said before, I don't believe in it. I believe in the marginalization. I believe that eventually it'll be reduced, just as I've said to you before, as westerns,
Sure.
because as a
Westerns were
whole,
huge at a one point in time, and now that you get one every 4 or 5 years.
you get one major one, you'll get like 20 online or in, a TV show combined
Sure.
the whole year.
Sure.
But
You-
superheroes will basically do the same thing. My thing is, when I think of fatigue, I think of super spy movies. And why I think
Like
of super spy
Bond.
movies, yes. And why I think of that is because I love Bond, will always love James Bond. But between the pressure of sexuality and what they perceive to be masculine and the other things, tropes that were making it successful in this time,
Mm-hmm.
either don't exist or are being queshed out
Mm-hmm.
or being pushed aside
Sure.
so that it can't be experienced the same.
Sure. Like,
Superhero movies, go ahead.
oh, so yeah, because I think some of the tropes that were James Bond was the great American, not great American, the great British,
At the time,
yeah,
time.
sure, white Superman, who was, Shaft was trying to be James Bond, was trying to be like, okay, he's sexy with the ladies, he's a tough guy, he's got cool gadgets, and now that most people have
Shaft didn't have
access.
gadgets, he had swagger.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. He didn't have gadgets. But I think that's the interesting thing is that now most people have the gadgets. Oh, watch out, doggy. They have gadgets in their pocket with their smartphones. So that isn't as impressive. And maybe with Tinder and Grinder and such, maybe the permissiveness of sexuality isn't that big a deal, where virtually everyone has seen something perhaps a little bit racy online. So, and him being like saving the damsel in distress, that doesn't play particularly well. And so you think that superheroes are going to sort of collapse under their tropes and maybe have fewer of them released, but still be released every now and again, like cowboy movies are now?
Yeah, they're not going to collapse much. They're just going to change because there's always going to be a country that has them. I mean, you have Hindi superhero movies. They just don't call them superhero movies.
Sure.
You have a guy literally able to shoot someone 5 different ways while jumping through a car window at the same time, not being crushed by the car, just tumbling around his body,
Sure.
rolling through.
Sure.
This mostly defies total physics.
Sure.
And you're going to say that's not a superhero movie.
Sure.
He's just not wearing a costume.
Yeah, I mean, John Wick, arguably, if they had just decided that they're going to turn that into the Punisher, and he just wore that the Punisher skull, on his chest, it would have played as a Punisher film for sure.
Exactly.
So
I mean,
it's going to morph.
It's not so much superhero. Yeah, it's not going to go away. It's going to morph. And what is going to happen? I mean, like DC has a lot of good properties. They just don't know how to use them. I mean, one of the best one is Dexter. Dexter is one of the best ones. Nobody would use Dexter because it's such a weird story, but it would do well.
Well, they could do well with Booster Gold, if you ask me.
Okay,
I mean,
you say why Booster Gold, and I'll tell you why Dexter.
Yeah, Booster Gold, it's like this celebrity ham from the future that wants to just be a superstar. I think that would really play well with our sort of influencer celebrity culture kind of thing.
Perfect.
I think that would really work. Oh, okay.
And see,
doggy.
Dexter was a homeless cat.
Okay.
That was taken in by a homeless person who died, freezing to death, protecting him. And a rage ring got on his paw.
Okay.
The red lantern ring got in his paw.
Oh, okay. Oh, so he's a Red Lantern.
And yeah, he's full of rage from the way humans have treated homeless and him.
Well, and see, excuse me, burped there. Pardon me, ladies and
That
gentlemen.
wouldn't worth a movie, but that would, like I told you before, do a DC TV show. That worth like a 1-hour episode.
Well,
it wouldn't worth a whole movie.
Well, and I think that DC mismanaged all of the stuff that had to do with the Green Lanterns. I mean, the Green Lantern, that was a very unexplored property, really, with and they never did it right. The Ryan Reynolds version wasn't well executed, partially because I think that was still kind of early doors with the superhero phenomenon. Like the Marvel Cinematic Universe hadn't taken off quite yet, if I recall correctly.
It was basically Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor.
Yeah, so no one knew the commercial viability yet. They knew that people would go see it. They just didn't know to what degree they would go see it. And I think that was kind of the problem. And sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. My dog pulled out the plug on my microphone. He is really wanting to find something back there, but I don't know what it is. Anyways, I think that they underfunded it completely, and they just mishandled it. I don't think that they knew what they were doing. I think if you were to do the Green Lanterns as almost like a Seven type police procedural, only with aliens, it would work. I think it would really work.
Myself, I have come to the conclusion, DC all the way, name my son after Superman. If I was to be part of DC in the movie, I would not go by that boat just yet. They flip people too often. They reboot too much. That's what I have against DC.
Well, I
have reboot fatigue. I don't have superhero fatigue. I have reboot fatigue.
Well, I think fans have reboot fatigue, but I think that regular folks also have superhero fatigue, because I do think you see these small films starting to really get a lot of critical acclaim. I love the studio A24. I just about watch everything that they put out, and they they're smaller films, and they're well acted, they're dramatic, sometimes they're scary, like Midsummer or uh, Hereditary. They're different things that are just really pretty intense. The Green Knight. And I think that there are people really championing those sorts of movies. And Everything Everywhere All at Once, it even dealt with the multiverse. So it was not, I mean, it was dealing with some of those comic booky things, but it just got much more critical acclaim than anything that Marvel had done in a while. So I do think that there's a fatigue. I definitely think, like, for instance, the fact that they're going to make less of them, according to your own sort of view, is because they're not making as much money. So they're not making as
Well,
much
that's
money because I think that people are kind of sick of them.
well, part is their fault, and let me explain their fault. What I mean is, as we have both said, oversaturation. But let's ignore that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Godzilla minus one.
Mm-hmm.
You have a movie that made 100 plus million
Mm-hmm.
and cost 15 million.
Yeah.
Okay, this in DC. And the only reason I say DC because DC has more fan films.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of fan films that look at the same quality that cost 100,000,
Sure.
half a million, and yeah, they might be 5 minutes, they might be a half hour. They need to incorporate these people, and they need to start explaining. I know some is the unions, 200 million. They're paying for the paint job to support the union, even though nobody worked on it, so they could eat. I understand that, but maybe they need to change their practice a different way. You
Well,
know,
and I think that if they do TV shows or animated features, they could continue and really do well. But I do think that these big budget summer blockbuster superhero films, I think that is it's I think really dying down. I think that people still want action films. I mean, how many Mission Impossibles are there? How many Fast and the Furious movies are there? And you know what? I have not seen any Fast and the Furious movies. I don't know how that
oh,
happened.
shame, sir.
Well,
Shame,
people
shame.
people ask me too. They're like, "You haven't seen any?" And I was like, "Yeah, I haven't seen not one." And I've only
Oh
seen
my,
one Mission Impossible, and that was like I think the one before the last one.
yeah, I
So
saw the first Mission Impossible and the second. I didn't see any of the others. And I saw the first Fast and the Furious, and I haven't seen any others
mhm.
because, again, what did we just say? Superhero movies without it being superhero.
Sure.
Because it doesn't help. Also, forget about superheroes when they have these websites that pop up and podcasts that pop up telling the real science. And like they had one, what if the Fast and Furious was real?
Mhm.
And they had like 20 scenes in one movie where someone would die. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I mean it's weird because for whatever reason, you tell me a guy got irradiated with gamma rays, and anytime he gets mad turns into this giant monster. For some odd reason, I don't have a problem suspending my belief there. But when you're throwing like driving a car through a skyscraper's bay window and then landing on, I don't know, was it a helicopter or another skyscraper, I'm just like, nah, that's not realistic.
See, you're a bad fan. You're the kind
I
of person we don't
I'm
want
like,
to
come
hear.
on, come
I
on.
mean, you're
He's
just
not
like
gonna.
the person
Yeah,
who is a doctor or whatever, and they watch the medical shows. Well, that doesn't work.
yeah.
What,
It's like,
dude?
come on, give me a break. So I do think there's mainstream acceptance superhero fatigue. I think that there is that fatigue. Little doggy, you were just barking over a little
I can
bone over
accept
there.
that. Like I said, it's just going to be like everything else, though. It's going to go down to being a little corner. I mean,
Sure.
even if like, but the thing is, how does it become like westerns? They're still true westerns, but they have comedies once in a while. Okay,
That's true.
but super spies, most super spy movies now are comedies.
Yeah, You have all these sort of spoof. The Melissa McCarthy spy movie was there.
Yeah, you have
The Dave
Argyle, you have the
Bautista,
Minions.
yeah, you have the Dave Bautista with the little girl
Yeah,
spy movie. Yeah, they're all they've made the well, I think that's you blame Austin Powers for that. I think
I know, but
Austin
still, how many clones can you have? Because we all know. For crying out loud, when James Bond was around in his heyday, they did a parody that was a great spot on two of them. They did Casio Royale, which
sure,
was done by the makers of James Bond.
sure,
Okay, and then you had Our Man Flint, which
sure,
you can't get no more parody than that.
sure. Sure. Well, and I think, and that's fine. I think that there's a lot more stuff that superheroes could do, superhero movies could do, but they're just it's going to take some risk because I don't know what the numbers are anymore. Like I don't think Marvel's did that well. Have you heard any reports on Madam Web or anything like that?
No, but speaking of that, the problem with Madam Web is that they should have had Madam Web be Glenn Close or Helen
Yes,
Mirren,
it would.
someone that age.
Yeah, well, because the Madam Web in the comics looks like that, and yeah, it's like, and now that I'm older, I'm just like, oh, geez, is that how old I look now? It's
No,
like Madam Web.
we look like George Sanford's son. That's what we look like.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, he was Fred Sanford and Sanford and Son, and Archie
Grady.
Bunker. I think they were only in their 40s.
Yeah, I'm saying Grady. So we're there now.
I think Grady might have been in his 50s, and I'm like, oh my gosh, man, these
Yeah,
guys
he
look like
was.
they're
That's the sad part. He was.
these guys look ancient. I don't feel like Grady from Sanford and Son. Gee. Yeah, so I don't know how the numbers are doing on that. Uh I think all of those actresses, I haven't seen many of the actresses that are in Madam Web. I've seen Sydney Sweeney in White
Dakota
Lotus. I saw Dakota Fan. It's not Dakota Fanning. Who am I thinking?
Johnson.
Yes, I haven't seen her in anything. I didn't. The only
50
thing I
Shades of
remember.
Grey.
Yeah, I never saw 50 Shades of Grey.
Neither did I.
I mean,
That's the sad
not
part.
casting aspersions on what wasn't it like Twilight fan fiction?
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't know how it relates to Twilight, but there you go. But Sydney Sweeney, and I mean no offense against Sydney Sweeney, nor sex workers. Sex work is real work, but Sydney Sweeney, she looks a little porny. She kind of looks like a very high quality porn
There we
star.
go with the genetic casting again. That's all to
I
be said. Patrick
I'm
Stewart and
not
Xavier. There you go.
Lord forgive me, I'm not trying to insult her or insult porn stars or sex workers or anything else, but there's just something about her that's like you kind of you look like you might get up to it. Um which is,
Moving
you know,
on.
moving on. But I liked her in White Lotus. I thought she was fine in White Lotus. I thought that was great. But I think that, but is that some of the
Because
casting that they're doing? Is they're casting people that are very attractive and sexy in these roles?
well, like Agatha, as in the actress who played Agatha Harkins with the
Harkness,
Wanda.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Wanda. Uh-huh. She
I
was
mean,
an
again, that
older, yeah.
should have been older, but first of all, she was younger than us. That's the first depressing thing. But the second thing is,
Oh no.
oh yeah. Second thing is that it made sense. That's the thing. As a character, it made sense that with her magic, she is old as she was,
Sure, she could
but
make
it made
herself
her
look younger.
young. Exactly. That made sense. But you have a character who has no magic, who's supposed to be basically the oracle, for lack of a better term, Madam Web, because she can see things across time through this web thought, if lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
And you put her into a young body, and we're not complaining. We know
Sure.
they're trying to do something, and my problem, not even with Madam Web, my problem is back to Discovery again. You have 5 products, forget DC.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Wild E. Coyote versus Acme court movie. Come on, man. You put that on the shelf?
Yeah. But see, that's what
I
I'm
mean,
saying. It's like I think
that's
that
not even a superhero movie. We all would have loved that. Anybody who, before political correctness, would have loved to see that, because realistically, we know if anybody should have a right to sue is Wile
it's
E.
why,
Coyote.
yeah, I mean, and I'm sure
He's got
there's
a
other
case.
coyote. Yeah, hopefully he can find other coyotes and get a class action suit going. But
I mean, he had a
yeah,
case.
but so I'm not quite sure what the reason for certain green lighting of things is. Like, I don't know if Marvel is trying to tie together the Marvels and Shang-Chi and Madam Web together. I don't know if
Well,
uh
my advice,
mhm,
my freebie is finish it.
is what?
Finish it. Go back to the ways of Babylon 5 when Paramount had they take a syndicated channel and claim 2 hours.
Mhm.
That's where Hercules came from. That's where Xena came from.
Mhm.
They had the Knight Rider 2010, which nobody liked. They had Smokey and the Bandit, which they did a couple of movies. They were doing these TV shows. They were just trying anything.
Yeah, throwing it's the
And
spaghetti sort of version of just throw whatever you can up against the window and see what sticks.
exactly. But Babylon 5 was one of the ones that they finished. Hercules is one of the ones they finished, even though they finished it through Xena. You
Hmm.
understand? Now the problem, and even the Legend of Kung Fu, the legend continues. They finish it, but the problem is, and this is the weirdest thing, in their cases,
Hmm.
a lot of times the show is going to end, and somewhere along the line, the last episode made more sense to be the previous to last episode.
Hmm.
In other words, the episode before made more sense to be the last episode. The way it was
Sure.
written, the way it was wrapped up, it made
Sure.
more sense. Xena, they had her reincarnated in the 20th century, you know, and she's actually Boxer, the tag along guy, and she
Really? That's
is
how they
reincarnated
ended
in his life.
Xena?
That was the second episode.
Oh my goodness.
But but in the end, Ares came back and realigned their bodies. That
Okay.
made a nice, good ending.
Hmm.
But
Okay.
instead, they had Xena die, and they had her Professor Love to Gabrielle and everything. You're like, well, you could have did that first. That's fine, great. Just
I never watched Xena. I always liked Lucy Lawless and all the things I've seen her in. I loved her in Ash versus the Evil Dead.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But because I do have a little bit of horror geek as well. But
But
I never saw the Xena stuff, nor did I see the Hercules stuff.
well, see, that's again, we talk about casting. It's all in how the character's dead, because Sean Connery first played Zeus,
Sure.
and this to me was more like the Liam Neeson uh kind of Zeus, as in I'm your father, let's have fun, you know.
Sure.
And then they had Roy Dice, he played Zeus, and those were like, I'm your father, you need to help me, because they were going to kill him.
Hmm. And
And then
this
they
is
had a
all in
young,
Hercules and Xena?
yes, and then
Man,
they had another actor.
how many seasons of Hercules was
There was
there?
like 5 seasons, seasons of Hercules, plus 3 TV movies and one cartoon.
Holy smokes. So Kevin Sorbo was making some money there.
Right, and then
And
that's where
now,
Ryan Gosling got his start as young Hercules.
well, there you go. Really?
Yes,
Hmm.
see, we're all sure, but that's again our geekness. But still,
Yeah,
each one of the actors portrayed and channeled a different vision of how Zeus was in the story.
yeah, you're
So when
alone
they had, I
on the
couldn't think
Hercules one.
about it when they had the younger Zeus. He channeled the menace of Zeus. He channeled Zeus being willing to kill everybody, and the only one that could kill him was Hercules. That
Huh.
made it sense. You know what I mean? You didn't like it from a Paphian point of view, but it made sense. But the way they're up here, well, we're going to bring in a superhero, because, like you said once, and it's true, part of the reason they're losing money is they don't finish it. So people are like, why am I going to invest my time? And you're not going to invest it, so I finish it.
Well, and I think that, I think there's a lot of burnout to go around. I think that there's some Star Wars burnout. I think there's some superhero fatigue. I think there's a lot of that. I think that, um, yeah, I think that some of that stuff just tends to work much better on a smaller scale. And, maybe some of these uh producers are just wanting too much out of these properties, and they might not. It might not go their way because I don't know that James Gunn is going to bring me to the theater with any of the DC stuff. I just don't know that.
Well, the only thing he's really done is infused music into certain scenes so that people like the song.
Sure, he's
I
done the
mean, that's what
Galaxy
he's
of
done.
the Guardians of the Galaxy music thing.
Yes, and I mean that's nice. I mean, I saw they did that with Flash.
Hmm.
They had the ending credit with the music going along with the dog being the
Sure,
last to be saved. Okay, that made sense.
sure.
But like you were saying, there are so many things they can do without hair triggering. And like I
Hmm.
said, finish it because Babylon 5 is considered one of the best things, and it got low ratings the first 3 years.
Didn't wasn't it Kaczynski that wrote that? J. Michael
Yes,
Straczynski, I mean, wrote that?
yes, yes.
Huh. I might have
And,
to.
and,
It kind of missed me. I don't know how I missed that. And I've heard nothing but good stuff about it. I stayed solidly in Star Trek stuff and Star Wars stuff on the TV. I did do Farscape and The Expanse. The Expanse I thought was great, but they had some problems with their, I think, last season. Altered Carbon. So I mean, there's definitely different sci-fi properties that I've watched, but I that were on TV, but I never watched Babylon 5. And really good, you say?
yeah, it really is.
How many
Because
seasons was it?
5, but see, that's the cool part. You know why it's cool?
Yeah,
Because day one, they said we need 5 years to finish our story.
and they finished it.
And they finished it.
Hmm.
And see,
Wow.
that's what's irritating about because Snyder would have finished Justice League in 5 years. They just let him finish it. We wouldn't have all the soap opera with the Flash.
Sure.
We would have had the story done. The actors would have gone and did other things and be quite happy.
Sure. And it would have been fine. But now they have to do James Gunn.
Exactly. They have to
Well,
restart again. And people are going, well, why would I want to do that when in 5 years, you're going to get rid of them? No one says that, I mean, even Godzilla took a 10-year rest.
well, I think one of the reasons why some of these Godzilla movies are doing so well is because people still want big action films where things go boom, and they might not be so tied to uh the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think Wolverine and Deadpool, that's going to do well. Uh I think that might bring me back, but I'm not a Deadpool fan. I liked Deadpool 1.0. His name was Spider-Man. Uh so that's,
Touche, touche.
yeah, so a crasser Spider-Man, not that, it, but he came out in, I think, the worst period of comic books, which is the 90s. The sort of,
Ouch. That hurt me.
it,
Thank you.
it was bad though. I mean, all the foil covers and the chromium covers and the
Well, that was really the problem was that
holographic color covers and
everything was a supreme. The only good thing was the internet was the way it was now. And
yes.
why I say that because literally I bought this Chrome cover and they're selling on eBay the next day for $1,000. Wait a minute. Well,
Sure.
I can
Yeah,
get that too.
now if you were to sell that same comic book, you couldn't give it away. Uh,
Yeah.
so that was part of the problem, is that, some of that
That was
stuff.
the saturation of that time.
Yeah. Well, and the death of Superman was during that period of time, and you had Nightfall, and the whole Bane breaking Batman's back and all of that stuff. And yeah, I didn't like the 90s weren't my favorite. I did like Vertigo. DC, I think, has always done adult comic books or mature comic books much better than Marvel ever could, ever has
I think they
tried to
do.
do.
I'm not going to say superheroes. I'm going to stay out the superheroes. But I think they do overall all the others better. What I mean is when they want to go kitty, they do kitty well.
Yeah, that's
When they
true. I
want to do
mean,
adult, they do adult well.
that's true. I feel like Marvel was kicking butt and taking names from the 60s to the 80s. And I think that the 80s on, I think that DC really has been arguably the stronger
Set of
company.
stories between the two. Between the two.
Yes, I mean Marvel always would have any number of outliers like Immortal Hulk or you know the Vision limited series. Those were really good. I mean, there's always been issues here and there that were really good. Hickman, I think, was doing well for the most part.
Well, see, it's
Spider-Man.
like, well, one of the arguments I've heard is John Landis, American Werewolf in London.
Mm-hmm.
His son had an interview because he's a director now.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, long story short, he was saying, the biggest mistake ever is that they killed Superman and bought him back. You know, he's saying this, of course, with drinking. And of course, like I said, I'm a Superman fan, so I don't agree with him. But I do see his point from a story point of view.
Yeah. Well, and
There's no reason why they shouldn't have a multiverse, or really have a multiverse
well,
where
they had
Superman
him.
does die.
They had him gone for a long time, though. I mean, he was gone for what, a couple of years?
He's gone for about a year.
I felt because they had the reign of Superman that whole period of time. You
Yes,
know.
he was gone for about a year because during that time they introduced Steel,
Mm-hmm.
they
And
introduced Superboy,
Superboy. Yeah.
and they introduced the Eradicator.
Sure.
And during that time, they slowly was bringing him back during that whole year.
Sure.
Because by the end of the year, we were supposed to discover that Cyborg Superman was actually the bad guy overall.
Sure. Well, and I think part of the problem was Superman with a mullet has always been a bit of a challenge. The super mullet is not a good look. Uh,
Yeah, they were trying a little hard. They were
they
trying a little hard.
not a good look. But but in general, I think that it was kind of spotty for Marvel in the last 10 or 20 years. I do believe there's been any number of good runs that people would do in Marvel. I mean, and there's always been good
The
stories.
thing is that Marvel has always been the one of public domain. Hence the
Mm-hmm.
Wolfman, hence Dracula,
Mm-hmm.
hence Frankenstein.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and some of them they did their own. Like the Man Thing is obviously a ripoff of the Swamp Thing,
Mm-hmm.
but then it could be argued Aquaman's a ripoff of Namor, so it goes back and forth.
Sure. Sure.
But that's again where the story is what makes the difference.
Well,
That's it
yeah.
because
But
Namor is supposed to be able to take animal abilities. That's one thing Aquaman can't do.
mm-hmm.
Aquaman can't take animal abilities, but he can command the Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Namor
Well,
can't do that.
and Namor is just such a little snit. He's such a little jerk. He, I'm,
He
I'm, I'm,
is.
I'm editing this because I don't want it to have an explicit warning, but he is a jerk, and I think that's one of the more interesting parts of his personality. He's like the one superhero where he's really a bit of an a-hole. He
He
really,
is, but in his own way. I mean, like one I saw was very interesting. It was a clip because I couldn't tell you the comic because I didn't read the comic, but it was a
mm-hmm,
clip where this centipoid
mm-hmm,
being was walking out,
mm-hmm.
and it was more of a humanoid attendant, and she was asking, "Did you sleep with her?" Talking about the centipoid, and he's like, "A prince doesn't tell."
Yeah, yeah. No, he gets up to
In
the
that
he.
sense, it was like that makes sense for his character,
Yeah, he
and that makes
gets.
the royalty and everything. But otherwise, you're right. In that sense, he is what you would want him to be. But otherwise, he is an a-hole and then some.
Yeah, he's great though. He's great because of that. Like he's the one character where he is full of himself and does not care, tends to do the right thing
But
nine
see, they
times
never
out of
put him
10.
against the right character. You know who'd be a good character?
Who?
Just think. It's probably
Against
what he's
I give up.
Namor versus Doctor Doom.
Oh, well, they've had moments of that. There was the supervillain team up that they issues that came out in the 70s, I think, that would
No,
have
I mean really go out Atlantis versus let's say any.
Latveria or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think Doom. There's not many people Doom respects. There's not many. I think there's a Hickman story, a Doctor Doom story coming out here pretty soon that I might have to pick up. But there's not many people that Doom respects, but Namor might be one. I think
Mhm.
he. I think he respects him. I think he respects Magneto. I think he begrudgingly If you put a gun to his head, a magic gun, because he probably would have to, you'd have to use source of supremacy to get through. He would say he respects Reed Richards. See, just came full circle. We talked about Fantastic Four again.
Yep.
But in general, he's another person that's a bit of a jerk. Do they have anyone in DC aside from Lex Luthor that really rolls the way Doctor Doom and Namor roll? I can't think of anyone. I can't think of anyone that just
Two, but it depends upon the writing. Two, but it depends upon Aquaman, but it depends upon the writing.
depends on the writing. Doctor Fate, maybe. Occasionally, Doctor
Doctor
Fate can
Fate
be
is,
kind of arrogant a little bit.
more when he's following the rules of the law and order. When he's following order, as in the essence, not the law that we write, but the
Sure.
cosmic. And then Raj.
Ghoul,
Raj Al
yeah,
Ghul.
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even he has a dignity. But I guess he's kind of like Doom in that way. They both have dignity and carry
Well, he has a
themselves.
self-justification. Let's be honest. I mean,
Yes.
crying out loud, in the Batman cartoon, he went and killed his daughter and put his brain in hers. I mean, come on.
Yeah. So yeah, he does. He's a tough guy. But yeah, but see, they could explore these stories, and then there wouldn't necessarily be superhero fatigue. But I think we just got hit so steady for so many years where those were the big movies. Yeah, there's some burnout, but they have
Well,
plenty of stories. They have plenty
like I
of
told
things
you
they can do.
before, as long as we have a legal system where the little guy feels bullied, we're going to need superheroes
That's true.
because
And
people are
maybe
always
they'll
going
go
to go
back
through
to
something.
maybe
Yeah.
they'll go back to being like Superman was in his original iteration where he was beating up slumlords. That's that telegraphs maybe some of my political leanings, which, ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting another podcast, which is going to be Politricked, the politics of insight, where it's a roundtable, left and right and no wing folks talking about politics. That's coming up pretty soon. And yeah, maybe maybe Superman will go back to beating up slumlords and say the rent's too damn high.
Well, yeah, like he stopped the war. He stopped the war by grabbing the two generals.
Yeah,
He said, "Who
those
would?"
old Superman, he was a little Batman. He was a little bit Batman every now and then.
Yeah, he just threw him. And see, what changed Superman was the war. That's what happened to Superman.
You think that's what?
No, that's on record. That's what changed Superman was the war. How is it after he did that? How is it we can have him in fiction stop a war, and yet we have our boys going out there trying to stop a war?
Yeah, I think the war that didn't help. I think it was kind of like 9/11 for the Marvel universe. It's like they did address it. I think it was in Spider-Man 36, I want to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was I understood the sentiment of that issue, but when you're having like Doctor Doom cry because of 9/11, it was like, come on, dude. That guy has killed so many people. He is
And
genocided.
and not
Uh-huh.
thought about it. I mean, he did it like off the subject a little. I was seeing, the most disturbing scenes in the movie, and they showed from the TV show Hannibal.
Sure. I
And
mean,
what are the characters? He literally sliced finely and put her in glass. You're like, what the?
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just
And
like,
that was a Doom action. That's what Doom would do.
yeah, Doctor Doom got up to all kinds of shenanigans. Same with Magneto, same with, I think they had the Kingpin in there also being like upset, and it was like, I understand that.
It's probably more realistic than any of them in that
Yeah,
sense,
that's like that.
character-wise.
Yeah, I mean, he literally had blew up Daredevil's brownstone. I mean,
I said he makes more sense though in that sense because he could feel because he always is. It's kind of like the way I look at Kingpin is kind of like Greed
sure,
from Full Metal.
sure.
That's exactly the best way. Yeah, I killed my people, but they're my people.
Yeah, yeah. Full Metal Alchemist. That's, man, I gotta
Yeah.
finish that up. That's another one that I'm about 2/3 of the way done that I'm just kind of like, I should probably finish that up.
Yeah, I
But
mean, it just makes sense. That's what it was. Kingpin. Now, like you said, Doctor Doom was more like Wrath.
sure.
Yeah, they're dead, and I'm not getting it. I'm not understanding.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think we should check out that Doctor Doom's limited series that Hickman will do. Hickman, like I said, if he had been given or wanted to do the amount of time on the Fantastic Four book that Byrne got, I think it would have been just so stellar, because that it was only like maybe 10 issues, maybe. It wasn't very long. I don't think it was 20 issues for sure, but it was a good run. And it was, the art was Dale Eaglesham, who did
Mhm.
JSA. I thought did arguably the best artwork that I've ever seen in JSA. Oh my gosh, he's just such a good artist. And that was the artist, and Hickman was the writer, and those were really good Fantastic Four books. That's where you got I guess it was the Council of Reeds, which Rick and
Mhm.
Morty and everybody else borrowed from.
Of course, except for Constant, because there's only one Constantine.
Sure, sure. So, well, anyway, that's the subject for today. Maybe there's some superhero fatigue. I think they'll continue. For sure. We'll
Just listen to
continue.
your fans and you'll make money. That's
Yeah.
easy. I didn't
Yeah,
say,
they'll make
rewrite and do the whole script. Don't cater to everything. Like I said, you shove Batgirl, that was stupid. You
Mhm.
shove Acme versus Wile E. Coyote, that's stupid. Because then it's like, okay, you did these so that people could, and you're going to delete them. Like they said, they might delete it utterly as far as Wile E. Coyote. Delete it, destroy it, get rid of all of it. You're just like,
Why did they
okay,
get rid of Batgirl? I don't remember. Was it the actress that they had a problem
no,
with, or?
it was just they when they hired Gunn, they decided to shut everything down.
And so they had
You
it
know,
done, but it just was like, nah.
it was 99% done.
Mm,
When they do the tune-ups and the checkups, is
sure.
99% done. I mean, it's the same thing like with the Flash. The Flash was supposed to have a different ending where everybody lived. It'd
Mm-hmm.
just be a different universe.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is what I have against it is stop cheating. What? Stop cheating. Don't put it before me and then take it away. Just don't put it before me. But
Yeah.
don't give me this new Supergirl and go, oh, okay, she's cool, and then kill her. Because you remember Man of Steel. Zod didn't have his powers day one he came out.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Flash, he comes out, he has powers day one.
Mm,
Okay, we can give that to that being a different universe.
sure.
But still, come on. Everything can't just be, you know,
One of the things that I am concerned about, which is why I am a little concerned about the superhero burnout, is that these movies do cost quite a bit to make. It costs quite a bit to get a Robert Downey Jr. to do it. Costs quite a bit to get the Industrial Light and Magic or whoever is doing most of the special effects to really have the special effects. And if you're not even making 50 million, off of a movie that cost you twice that to make, they're going to stop making them. They're going to stop making them. And,
we do
but
not want to go back to the days of Spider-Man using a rope. I've
yeah,
been there. That
no,
was horrible. Or the
no.
Hulk wearing Crocs. Please support, because that's what we did. We support. Even though
Yeah,
we didn't even like it. Sometimes we watched that
some,
was the most horrible thing in the world. But we
yeah.
sat there
So
watching.
perhaps if you're a geek out there, support the stuff because it could go away real easy. I definitely going to come out and watch Warhammer and all that. Excuse me, when that comes out. I
And
probably,
stop getting rid of actors as soon as you get them. Henry Cavill is the reason why I say that.
yeah,
Yeah.
because well, he wanted to do the books legitimately like the novels, and I think that they didn't want to do that.
He has
And
Witcher. That's the problem with Witcher. And
I
then
think,
Superman, he got screwed there.
yeah, well, and this would be, excuse me, this would be kind of, oh brother, how woke art thou, part two. I had a conversation with some white uh compatriots, some co-workers of mine, talking about woke, and they had an interesting perspective because they were like, most of the arguments that they had were arguments to stick to the source material, and the production companies would change that stuff, and I think that's what they did with The Witcher. but because the way they changed it did involve race or gender, the people that had the complaints about stick to the source material were painted occasionally as being sexist, racist, or homophobes. And I
I
think
understand
that's
both sides.
the difficulty, is that for some of that stuff, the complaints look like they may be racist or sexist, but in fact are more about continuity or how the characters are. And if they explain it right or write them well, then the fans typically, I tend to think geeks are a little bit more open to
Or
LGBTQ.
forgiving.
And much more forgiving towards changes in race and gender than the public at
I
large.
do
So,
and I don't, because the best example is the new Dune. Not Dune 2, Dune
oh,
1,
you're thinking
and
of
versus.
like having some of the people on Atreides look a little bit more Arabic,
Well,
perhaps?
no, not that route. Even though I mentioned that to you earlier, not that route. One of the ones is in Dune 1 that came out.
Mm-hmm.
The I forgot who she was. She was, but they changed her sex, they changed her race
Mm-hmm.
because the character was white and it was played by Max von Sheldon. You know, the guy who played the
Max von
devil,
Sydow, maybe?
Van Sydow, yeah, played by
Mm-hmm.
him. And in the '84 movie,
Mm-hmm.
and his
Oh,
take
with
was his character,
David Lynch.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And his character was what made sense from the point of view because it was based on the book.
Mm-hmm.
He had became part of the culture. He adapted to the culture. He loved the culture. He wasn't from there. Okay. The new one, they changed the sex, and she actually secretly was a member of the culture.
Okay.
And it's just like that changed the story even microly in a different way.
Sure.
Because the other one, he was just left to die. In her case, she sacrificed her with one of the worms. But still, I mean, you're just like, hey, that just entirely changed the story.
Well, and
Was it better? It can be argued.
Well, and that's the thing, is I think that fans are pretty tolerant if you change a story if it makes it better. Like like I said earlier in this conversation, I don't need the spider to have bitten Peter Parker to be radioactive. It makes more sense now to be a genetically enhanced super spider than anything else. Uh, but that's fine. It's another thing if you are saying that, oh, the person that actually died was Aunt May, not Uncle Ben. I mean, that changes things a bit. That
So let's
changes
see, that's the multiverse there.
sure. And so, if the change, but I think that this is, like I say, this is the part that would almost of this podcast that could almost be, oh brother, how woke art there, part two. I think that there seems to be people on both sides that have a vested interest in playing up some aspects of the argument, but for their own perhaps economic or political reasons. Like if you're upset that Finn was a black stormtrooper because your understanding of stormtroopers is that they're clones, that isn't necessarily racist. But if you, as the producers or makers of that content, say, oh, you people that are complaining, you're just racist. Well, if you explain, oh no, they child soldier people, which an empire would do. They would kidnap people and force them to be
Conscript them.
stormtroopers. They absolutely, every empire does that. And so that makes sense. And then from what I understood, is that people, when that got explained, let that go,
Right.
and so you can't say that it was necessarily racist. But if someone says what you're doing is racist, then they can hype their movie a bit more, get more people involved in the idea of no publicity is bad publicity, it's all publicity, and get more people to see it. And so while maybe making some folks who have legitimate concerns paint them as racist. Now, I also think there are racists who absolutely are saying racist stuff and trying to muddy the water there too. You were going to say something?
Oh no, I was just thinking about a person I know. He was talking about he had a question. No, he went to a Ren fair. He went to a Ren fair, and he was of our hue.
Okay.
And he had a person at the fair. He run over to him, and said, there were no black people then. And I'm like,
Uh,
because he put it out as a question. I'm like, the Moors?
yeah,
Come
yeah.
on, the Moors?
There was quite a few. There was the Ottoman Empire was just around the corner.
I mean, the Moors,
Yeah,
Zulu.
yeah. I think that people don't realize that the social construct of race, uh, when it comes to the creation of what is white and the creation of what is black, is fairly modern. There's that's few hundred years tops. That
top,
notion,
top. And what people don't understand is racism exists, but it exists for different reasons. It exists because of fear.
sure,
It exists because of bad experience.
sure,
It exists because one was raised that way.
sure,
It exists because you've been unjustly hurt.
sure.
That
And
that's it.
so yeah, so I think this notion that there weren't black people in the Middle Ages is obviously incorrect. We didn't just we weren't
Yes, we did.
just
Yes, we
right.
did.
No, we were just in grass huts until we were saved by the white slave owners to
No. We didn't
educate.
exist then. No.
It's like,
We
come
just showed up
now.
one day. We
Yeah, it's
just
just
showed up
like
one day.
poof. Yeah, we just appeared. Yeah, that's it's that level of ignorance that we're fighting for sure.
I mean,
And
because
but
when you're geeks, you love story. And
mhm,
and one thing about, we have our preferences. People will jump and they'll say race preference sometimes too. And you just go, yeah. But it's not so much that, it's more of good experience
sure,
or supportive history.
sure.
Because, we can talk about race and we have seen it.
Hmm.
You go to a convention, you'll see those of our hue with not our hue,
Sure, sure,
especially at our age. And you wonder what happened. But that's our age.
sure.
Younger, you see more of us. The further younger you go, the more you see of us. And it's
W-
really like, oh, you guys come late.
Well, like I
Okay.
say, there's a lot of content creators on YouTube that are black creatives talking about anime. And I mean, I'm an anime fan from the years of Robotech. So,
Kimba,
I
Kimba, the lion.
I go way back. I don't go back to Astro Boy, but I definitely go back to Robotech and
See, I go
Manzinger
back to the
and
Battle of the Planets.
yeah, and Battle of the Planets. Yep, which used to be, which actually is Gotcha Man. Yeah, so yeah, I mean I was talking to my wife about that just yesterday because we ended up watching Battle Royale,
Mhm.
which is a bananas movie. I remember reading the manga years ago, but it's bananas. It's so I could see why
And
it was like, yes, this is super R, and children should not see this, and we're not going to play it on regular audiences because we don't want kids going crazy. Uh, but yeah, I was talking about like yeah, Gotcha Man and Robotech. Those were old school anime, and now
underground videotapes.
yeah, and now you can find any number of brothers and sisters that are into Naruto and Dragon Ball Z. Well, I forgot those three black wrestlers. I forgot what their names are, but they're super into Dragon Ball Z. See, that's why this is called Old Man Geek, Old Man Blerd, ladies and gentlemen, because we forget
Well, yeah.
everybody's names.
Well, I mean, and the truth be told, you look at it, and I mean, there's some things we tolerate. We tolerate the exaggerations of black lips in some of the old stuff,
Ugh.
but we like the story is more important, or like people getting mad about black dwarfs in the Ring of Power by Amazon.
Hmm.
That was an old argument from last year, and it's like, I'm more concerned about where they came up with dwarves and women having beards. You know,
Yes. Yes. Well, and and I think that's when it dips a toe into a bit of racism. Yes, I understand that J.R.R. Tolkien was looking at this as a European analogy and a European allegory, but I don't care about black dwarfs. I don't care particularly.
well, they had one. They had one. I forgot what the show was because literally I was looking
Doesn't
at the
bother
powers of
me.
Merlin. I
Hmm.
was looking at the powers of Merlin. So he shows you how geeky I am. I
Hmm.
was looking at the powers of Merlin, and one of the recent interpretations had a black person play Merlin,
Okay.
and the person had a substantiated complaint. He said, I'm going to sound racist for a minute, but I want you to hear me out. I couldn't tell you the name to save my life, but it's true. He said the actor is good, Merlin's good, but Merlin should be black because one of King Arthur's knights was black, and that was the biggest attraction as far as highlighted factor of him
Mm-hmm.
was that people were so awestruck that this black man,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where he come from, because
Mm-hmm.
their arrogance and everything,
Mm-hmm.
where he come from, and yet he's part of King Arthur's army. So they have two feelings. Number one, they go, okay, I believe the king is doing right, but is he a demon or what?
Mm-hmm.
And having Merlin be black, that takes away from it.
Sure.
I
In other
understand
words,
that argument.
that makes it that's a reasonable argument. It's like if there are other characters that are black and it's made as an important part of their character and the storyline, making another character black that would be a contradiction to why that other character was black being a big deal. That makes sense. But again, it's the problem is that and I don't know what dark forces are involved, but it seems as though all of these conversations that involve wokeness and all of these things tend to be things that are casting choices where they change the gender or the race. And you know some they're just there's I just want to think about, I think it's how do you say it in Latin? Qui bono? It's like who benefits? Because these arguments are being made, who's benefiting? And I feel like there are people that are racist that are benefiting, and I think there are people who are marketing execs that are benefiting because they stir the pot. And I think everybody else is just involved in these arguments, serving, unfortunately, their dark purposes, and that's
Well,
unfortunate.
see, here's a good argument right here. This is racist on racist, and this I'm guilty, Your Honor, I'm guilty. The play movie 12 Angry Men.
Mm-hmm.
About 10, 15 years ago, I was riding the bus, and this girl was saying how she was going to be doing the sports fan in 12 Angry Men. And I was just floored. It's like, what? Idiot making 12 drawers or something? This is crap. What the?
Why is just that it shouldn't be a woman playing the characters? That was the idea.
The thing is that the whole point was they talk about how they're men. And in the play, they do talk about racism, but it's more towards Puerto Ricans or whatever the ethnicity was at the time that the movie was made, the play was made.
Mm-hmm.
Now, by having it be sexual, how can they have that scene? How can they have that explanation?
See, but that's where I get into how it's a bit of a trap because it's like these kinds of casting decisions, which on paper might be like, oh, that's kind of neat, but also on paper be like, well, that changes the story this way, that way, and my worship of the story is the key point. But then because it involves race, because it involves gender, it then gets swallowed up by this culture war that everyone seems to be fighting. And I just wonder who's benefiting from it. Because I do think that, sometimes you can tell a different story by changing a gender or changing a race, and it serves the story, and maybe you end up telling a better story. I don't think that changing the kingpin from white to black does much of anything, really. Like
No, it's just
in the
supposed to be
first
a person who was
it is a
had his
criminal. Yeah, he
paws
was.
over the city.
Yeah, he's just a criminal. That it made sense on some level, but which is unfortunate because that has to do with stereotyping as well. But if it serves the story, it does, and you can write it well, that's the key. But if you're doing it just to stir the pot, I think you're benefiting the racists and you're benefiting people whose bottom line is the bottom line, which is how much money they're going to make. The biggest thing that I ever got upset about was that the Ancient One in Doctor Strange should have been Tibetan, which is what he
Yes,
was in the comic books. And the
yes.
reason why that was changed, now a person could say, oh, well, you're being sexist or even racist because it was Tilda Swinton, who I love as an actress, being the character. But my beef was no, there's a reason why he was Tibetan, and the reason you changed it was because you wanted to sell to Chinese audiences, and China has a major beef with Tibet, and you wouldn't be able to make your extra $1 billion selling to China. So it wasn't
Absolutely
that
correct.
it wasn't a service to the story. It was a service to your marketing and trying to not make trouble. And I tend to
That,
think it would have been better as a thumb in the face of authoritarians and to have him be Tibetan, and which
oh,
is
I totally agree. And see, especially they have too many Tibetan actors. They have too many Asian actors. And I mean, also they look at it from the wrong time period because like Shang-Chi, the Kung Fu master, they were trying to do Bruce Lee, but when he first came out, his father was Fu Manchu,
sure,
as in the 1929 pulp novel villain.
sure,
And again, they'll go as racist. What is racist? The idea of Fu Manchu is no more than a Cardathian.
sure,
What? Yes, as in Star Trek. No
sure,
more than they're methodical and they mix up. So
sure.
you want to say that about the Asian culture at that time? Yes.
But see, I
You want
think
to say that?
that plays into the trope of that whole Orientalism exotic thing that they did. And I think that there was an element of the ancient one that played into that too. And so it may not be overtly racist, it's certainly on the same highway of
Yeah.
racial stereotypes.
Yeah. But I mean, it's the same thing like in the movies where they have blacks be stronger or whatever else. Okay,
Sure,
we can
sure,
go back to Jimmy the Greek if we're going to go that route. But get my point
sure,
because
sure.
I don't want us to be canceled like him.
Yeah, right, Jimmy the Greek. But see, that's the thing is that I'm a person who has fought for LGBTQIA plus rights. I've wear my lefty lefterson stuff on my sleeve, but I didn't like that casting just because I felt like that was not courageous. They could have been courageous had it stick to
I feel the same
to
way.
the truth of the story, and also they could have navigated avoiding some of those ancient oriental quote unquote trope kind of stuff. The Orient is mysterious and exotic. They could have avoided that and still
Or they
had
could
him
have
be
played off
Tibetan.
it because it is, but how much? I
Yeah,
mean,
they
there's no
could have
more mysterious
sure,
than like someone not seeing a car from the inside. I mean, come on.
sure. And
But
I
to
still
my
I
point is, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna
I
say,
would,
and I still enjoyed Tilda Swinton in it. Wasn't like getting on my keyboard, but going bang, 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 bang on the keyboard, saying I am mad about this. No, but
now see, I felt the opposite. I was mad about Finn.
who?
I was mad about Finn from the last three
Oh,
of the
from
Star Wars trilogy.
yes, and I think
Yeah,
you are.
because he was going to be the Jedi, the next Jedi, and when you brought up China, they took him off the poster when it went to China.
Sure, and I think that there seems to be some prejudice that seems to be a concern with Chinese
Oh, let's be
audiences
honest,
when it
be okay.
yeah,
Be
well,
okay when it's their country.
yeah, there seems to be some racial intolerance with China when it comes to people of color that are black. I think they were worried about Black Panther doing well, and Black Panther did fine there. So, maybe
Mhm.
maybe don't kowtow to the prejudices of a country and and do the stories as they could be done. And, I think having him be Tibetan would have been like I said, a nice thumb in the face of authoritarians who believe they can walk in and take over a
And they
country
can still
and
do it.
destroy them.
They can
Hmm,
still do it. We could have an ancient one before her
sure.
who somehow was Tibetan,
Yeah,
who could have been
yeah,
her teacher. I mean, there's
yeah.
so many things they could do. But again, that's what I mean, because like you talk about the Black Panther, here we hear, and this is where again our interpretation versus their interpretation. One of the critics of China from China about the Black Panther was that it was dark. First thing they thought about was that it was talking about black. No, they were talking about it was dark.
Sure.
And if you think about it, 70% of the movie does take place in the dark.
Yeah, yeah,
It does. It takes place at night.
sure. It's true. Yeah, but I think sometimes give people more credit, and sometimes you do have to push a group to be a bit more accepting. I don't think you should change American art so
Once
that
we
it
do,
can be more palatable to another audience. I think that's giving one of the strengths that is America away for commerce, and I don't like that. But
I mean, we did that as far back as the Magnificent Seven in reverse.
Sure.
because the
Well,
poor
there
dirt
hasn't been a good.
farmers, they're running around with all their clothes are lily snow white, even though they're poor dirt farmers. Think about that for a second.
Sure. Well,
Because the Mexican culture didn't want them to look bad.
there hasn't been a good Western that wasn't ripped off from Japan.
We're gonna go that route.
So yeah, the Magnificent Seven. I mean, the Seven
Seven
Samurai.
Samurai. Yes, yes, I know. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. You
but
go with that route, huh?
yeah, I did. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we went a little bit long, which I think is great, and you'll enjoy it. We got a little bit of the woke stuff. We talked about some nopes and some dopes and some hopes. But I think that we probably should wrap it up so I can edit this thing.
Yep.
So, like I said before, please like and subscribe to us. Hit the likes. They're very important for those of you that aren't people that make content. You may not know that those likes help the algorithm, the almighty algorithm, and helps us to get that much closer to being able to get commercials and get monetized. Right now, we're doing this as a hobby. We'd love to do it more and maybe have a few dinero shoved our way with some advertising to help with some of the costs that we incur by doing this that we love. So, but drakestorm@gmail.com and urbandharma8, that's urbandharma at the number 8 at gmail.com, or drupgyu, drupgyu 108 at gmail.com to get a hold of us. And yeah, let us know your thoughts through emails or anything else, any way you want to get in touch with us. Social media, we're on Instagram with thatso.quantum. Get a hold of us there and just let us know what you think, if there is superhero burnout and if the woke thing is still plaguing us, a pox on our house of nerddom. Let us know.
Yes, it is.
Let us know. And so, like we like to say, don't be a stranger.
Just be strange.
Take care, and we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Bye.